Mr. Ibe Kachiku is the Minister of State for Petroleum. Gatherings as this must mean a lot to him as all eyes turn to his ministry for succor from the continued fuel scarcity across Nigeria. Kachiku insists looking for innovative trends to develop Africa's oil and gas industry needs new technologies to make local content work better in Africa.
The difficulty about attracting investments when you attend OTC is that you end up being the investor visiting. Everybody attends and everybody tells you what you can do. And there was a need for them to come here and visit us and see what potentials lie in this country for investment, and not just in this country but in Africa. If you cannot produce cheap cost oil, if you cannot diversify the processing of your oil, if you cannot look to, quite frankly, internalizing and externalizing the investments in this sector, so your people are as important as your foreign investors, if you cannot capture the requisite technology skills that are essential to help you operate efficiently, you are lost before you start. In another 10 to 15 years, export of crude oil as we know it will be a shameful harbinger for any country that is doing it. And if you look at the movement in the Gulf, if you look at even the United States that had exited, quite frankly, production of oil, everybody is coming at it from a different angle. Shale in the US, diversification in the Gulf, and so much more is going on. And then clean energy focus is beginning to make almost irrelevant the vast reserves of crude oil that you have in ground, unless you can turn them into things that are clean. So the challenge for oil companies who are operating here and the challenge for Nigerians who are in this sector has changed. So there is a lot of challenge in this, and I thought that the OTC equivalent here will begin that process of re-engaging. I expect that future OTCs will have, quite frankly, a research room which will show us the latest technologies. Last week I was at Egina, in Lagos to open up to Taos Egina FPSO, and I was, quite frankly, amazed by the sheer exploratory grounds that that project has set. For the first time, close to 30–40% of an FPSO was put together in Nigeria, exported to go tie-in, and here the FPSO is lying in Lagos, accepting tie-in. And so when I hear the executive secretary of NCDMB say that we must have add-on and additive effects for future projects, I can well understand that.
The minister also says multinational oil companies operating in Nigeria might be compelled by the federal government to build refinery facilities in Nigeria to ensure the country fully maximizes its hydrocarbon resources and moves away from just exporting crude oil.
We've addressed refineries. It may not be very obvious, but for the first time, we're creating a model where private investment is going into our delability refineries. Some of those will be announced over the next one month. And we're still targeting to be able to get these refineries up and running from the about 14% utilization capacity today to about 90 to 95% over the next 18 to 20 months. If we do that, hopefully we'll begin to move very drastically to self-sufficiency in production of refined petroleum products. With CQs, and I must thank NNPC most substantially, because on Tuesday or Wednesday last week, I gave them a marching order that whatever it took, I didn't want my visitors coming into Abuja to CQs. When I came back this weekend, I was very, very happy to see that a lot of work had been done. So let's give them a round of applause. There are other areas that we've looked at, that we've made a lot of success in. The area of legislation and regulation, we've been able to bring out the gas policy, we've been able to bring out the petroleum policy, we submitted the fiscal policy to the Federal Executive Council, we've held that back to enable us to have the sort of conference and discussion that are essential to fine-tune and make sure everybody's on board. The Assembly itself has done its yeoman job of passing the PIGB, waiting for the executive to. So a lot has happened over a period of 2 years, even in the legislative and policy area. We started the early renewal of leases way before time. We're moving at it as rapidly as we can. We're looking at potentially going into marginal fuels releases. So everything that needs to be tackled here has been. But one of the biggest things that we have done is open up this sector so that people can see it. Today, NNPC publishes its reports. The Petroleum Ministry is as active in the web as any other ministry. And more important, some of the fundamental changes that have happened in NNPC have changed the scope from just being a parastatal of size to a parastatal of efficiency. So people are focused on core businesses. People are focused on being able to compete. Those models will continue to get work, and I thank Dr. Makanti Barrow for continuing that whole philosophy. But we're going to continue to work. It's a long road to freedom. But that road, we're going to take the first innovative steps that will enable us to free up this sector and make it productive.
According to the minister, Nigeria's average in-country refining capacity is 14% and would need to be upgraded to meet the demands of our rising population.
Africa is probably the continent with the least supply of power. And until power is available, this continent cannot move. Nigeria, obviously, with its 180 million people and growing at a very rapid rate, is critically in need of power. That power won't have unless gas projects become incentivized and happen rapidly. Now, what's stopping us from that? Africa is the only one where we still import most of our petroleum products from abroad, whereas we have refineries and we have the crude. Just a non-starter. Why? What is stopping us from that? Africa is still the only ones where there are question marks in terms of whatever activities we have in the oil sector, whether we're doing the very best that we can. What's stopping us from improving? Africa is still the only area where, with vast amounts of resources, the owners of this resource all over the nation and all over African countries continue to cry for neglect and abandonment. There are so much challenges, and sometimes you ask yourself, what is holding Africa back? What is it about Africa that prevents it from taking the bold steps that is essential for it to move, and actually win the liberation that it's essential to make it a continent of envy? But let me give you the silver lining. The silver lining is that as most developed countries are reaching basically the peak of their development, Africa today, with its bushes and wildlife and resources, remains a continent yet untapped, abundant potential possibilities unlimited. If we do the right things at the right time, with the right energy, with the right opportunities, Africa can begin to move. I am hoping that this summit will be the very beginning of that movement.
The Vice President of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, attends the last day of the 5-day summit. In his speech, he assures investors that the federal government is working to ensure speedy passage of relevant legislations that would create an enabling environment to make the oil and gas sector vibrant.
This is at the same time that this coincides with some African countries just making fines. The volatility of the oil market is another serious challenge. These are not challenges that can be addressed successfully solely by countries taking independent decisions. Collaboration, synergies, and knowledge sharing are critical. For us in Africa, we have to work hard to make the best of our God-given resources before it's too late. Together, we can surmount our hurdles faster than if we try to do so individually. I should like to assure our oil and gas operators of the federal government of Nigeria's commitment to creating the enabling environment for the industry to achieve its destiny in Africa. As you are aware, in our determination to introduce legislation that will remove all encumbrances to efficient conduct of oil and gas businesses, and learning from past experience, we split the Omnibus Petroleum Industry Bill into a number of proposed legislations, maybe 3 in all, some of which have been approved already by the Executive Council for presentation to the National Assembly for their consideration. And we believe that this will be done speedily, and already we're seeing signs that a lot of work has been done by the National Assembly.
This summit will afford Nigeria a unique opportunity to showcase to the international community policy direction and efforts of government in the petroleum sector, especially the new oil and gas exploration and markets, new measures to sanitize the sector, the expansion of investment opportunities to boost investors' confidence, technological advancement, Nigerian content development, the institutionalization of reforms in the country's oil and gas industry, and the galvanization of Nigeria's position as the leading oil producer in the continent of Africa.